I want to share some awesome, amazing news with you. A while back, I posted a video about a client I have who could no longer find any evidence of her own breast cancer by touching her breast. Her mother did the same thing, her doctors did the same thing. Um, and still, she had to push them for weeks to get medical confirmation of this. So now she has had mammography, ultrasound, all the appropriate medical tests, and they can find no trace of cancer whatsoever. This is amazing. This is really, really cool news. Um, she Now, the also very interesting thing is that even when they could no longer find a lump in her chest, they argued that the medical doctors argued that there was no point in doing any medical tests, the ones she has now had, obviously, because it wouldn't change anything. They still wanted to do several months more of intense chemotherapy and then surgery. The doctors told her flat out that it didn't matter. Even the medical tests, it wouldn't matter what they showed. They were going to do the course anyways. And even now that it's been medically verified that she has no trace of cancer at all, they can't find anything, that does not alter the decision making of the doctors. They still want to proceed the same way they would if the cancer was still there. Their rationale is that even though we can't find anything, there might still be something there, and that might begin to grow. So that is a fascinating thing about us human beings, right? This power of confirmation bias, how our brains seem to be pretty much wired to see stuff that confirms what we already believe and to pretty much discard everything else. Back in the African savannah, back in the day, this tendency towards confirmation bias probably ensured our survival. Like, imagine walking on the savannah and hearing, some sounds around you in the grass, and might be a predator, might just be some benign sounds. Of course, if you immediately respond as if there's a threat and you run away, and there is no threat, you're fine, unless you run in the direction of another threat, obviously. But you're fine. And if there is an actual threat, then at least you have a head start. But if you were to take a more cool and rational approach and wait, well, if there's no threat, you're fine. If there is a threat, you're likely toast. So we seem to be the descendants of people with brains as belief engines, as the skeptic Michael Shermer writes about in his excellent book, The Believing Brain. Even though Michael Shermer is on case to say that these sorts of cancer remissions using psychological means are not possible, even though there are thousands of documented cases of this in the medical literature. Anyways, so that tendency towards our brains just quickly believing something and seeing what confirms with those beliefs has probably ensured our survival for a long time. But these days, it might be one of the biggest psychological obstacles for us human beings living good lives and being wise. I may have mentioned this earlier, but I read a book called Blind Injustice by the former prosecutor Mark Godsey, who now has become an innocence lawyer, and he tells about these cases of when DNA testing exonerates innocent people, how to begin with he naively believed that all they would have to do in the case of a wrongful conviction was to show the DNA that says this is not the murderer or this is not the rapist, and how he would often be stunned by getting prosecutors and DAs who would respond with, well, this doesn't mean that your client is innocent. It just means that there were two rapists, and now we have to find the other one as well because it's clearly his semen. It's a strong example of tunnel vision and confirmation bias. Um, anyways, back to the cancer case. When I worked with this particular client, it's a woman I know quite well. I've worked with her in the past. Great hypnotic subject, very much in tune with felt sense, good awareness of inner experience. And she also had a belief system that says that these things are possible and that what we call the mind and body is an integrated system. So she came in looking for a radical remission. Um, I did not charge her any money at all in doing this work. I made no claims, I made no promises, but she came in and said, look, I think this breast cancer has something to do with what's happening inside of me. Can we explore that? And I, of course, said yes, but I made no claims, no promises. I charged no money. I never gave any medical advice. I have not interfered. The only thing I've done is I've future paced and prepared her for that response from the medical doctors and says, look, given their worldview and their training, and even though the science does not support the mind-body split, still in medical education and medical practice, it seems to be the norm. The whole idea of the body as a machine still seems to be the norm. So given that, and given confirmation bias and in-group loyalty, it's going to be very hard for them to respond otherwise than the way they responded. And of course, ultimately, it's up to her. Now, all the choices that the doctors have put for her are variations of continuing doing the same thing. No one's suggested, why don't you leave it alone? And which should be an option, even though I can't say that. But anyways, when she came in, what we did. So when she came in, she had a very aggressive breast cancer, a solid tumor, and the doctors had prescribed 6 months of chemotherapy, followed by surgery. So when I saw her, she had had 1 round of chemotherapy, and she was resting up after that 1 round and didn't feel any different at all. And when she came into my office, she was cold and depressed. And without revealing any of the content of the session, what we did essentially was to have her focus in on her breast area, really get absorbed into the suggestions, and to just kind of track and follow the sensations with a lot of suggestions from me as to what might want to emerge as she connects and feels into it in terms of cognitions, emotions, memories. And what emerged surprised her a bit, and it was identity level stuff, and very strong embodied beliefs of kind of deserving to be punished, in a sense. So I helped her see the illusory nature of those identity statements, and to really deeply see that this was not her at all. And some other stuff emerged as well. We had 2 sessions, and after the first session, she no longer felt depressed. She felt warm in her body. She felt that something radical had happened in her system. And as the days progressed, she said, I'm feeling that the tumor is shrinking. It feels different as I touch it. And we had one more session um, a few days later, also a very dramatic session. And after that, a few days later, I can't remember if she started the second session of chemotherapy or not when this happened, but she called me and said, I can't feel anything anymore. I can't find anything. So all the change seems to have happened between the first and the second round of chemotherapy. After that, she hasn't been able to find anything. The doctors, her mother, she's been asking for medical tests before she does anything new. The doctors have insisted. So she did one more round of chemotherapy to appease them, and then got the medical tests, which now show that there's no trace of cancer uh, whatsoever. And I don't know what she's going to decide to do. I can't give medical advice. I can't dictate those things. But the kind of tragic thing is that none of the doctors have shown any curiosity about her or what she might have done, and she is reluctant to tell them, or really anyone, what she's actually done, because she can sense from the doctors a lack of curiosity, and sense, probably rightly so, that they would not be open to hearing about this, and that they're not interested. And as a result, they get to maintain their worldview, and life moves on as usual. Which given our brain's proclivity for confirmation bias and tunnel vision and that sort of stuff, of course, is to be expected. It's kind of risky for me to make this video because people get funny and aggressive, especially some fellow explorers in the hypnosis world who are trying to get into academia, but become these politically correct watchdogs who might try to shut you down if you ever make claims such as these. So what are the claims I'm making? Just to be specific, am I claiming that I have somehow cured her of cancer? No, not making that claim whatsoever. Am I claiming that a particular method or technique cured her of cancer? No, not making that claim whatsoever. Um, it is possible, of course, that this remission would have happened anyways, uh, even though I highly doubt it. Um, it's, of course, she who has created the remission inside of herself. I'm very sure that the context that I provided for her and my input was essential for her in doing that. It's a cooperative venture. It is, of course, possible that the work we did together has nothing to do with the remission. It's possible. I don't believe that, neither does she. But we have to acknowledge that it's possible. The doctors had prescribed 6 months of chemotherapy and surgery. Uh, they had not seen cancer disappear that quickly. So, but I mean, they will probably chalk it up to her being some sort of super responder, like an outlier who responds to chemotherapy that much faster than the norm. Might that be possible? Perhaps. I don't really know enough about chemotherapy or variations in response. I mean, all of these things are possible. So, even though I'm convinced that the work we did together has a lot to do with that outcome. So, I mean, if you're doing this type of work, I mean, making cause and effect claims, claiming that a particular technique or approach can cure cancer or that you can cure cancer. I mean, these things would be highly unethical. As I said, I haven't even charged money. I think trying to get in the way of their medical treatment would be unethical. At the same time, given what we know today, that this whole idea of the mind-body split is bunk. It's just nonsense. This idea that people just get sick and it's just a matter of genetics and biochemistry and that it has absolutely nothing to do with their inner life or their relationships. This is a very, very questionable idea that's not medically supported at all. We know today a lot about how what we call mind and body is interconnected, how our inner emotional life influences our physiology, how our identity can have dramatic, how we are able to embody certain ideas and how our physiology can respond to them. The effects of culture. So I think it's just as unethical to shut down the psychological, social, cultural door and to just say, don't look in that direction. Just sit back and just view this as pure bad luck and leave it completely in the hand of the doctors. I think that's an unethical message to give people as well. I think it's extremely empowering to say, look, let's open the psychological, emotional, relational door and explore that avenue and see what might come out of it. It may result in a radical remission. It may not. It may just make it so that the person deals with pain better or has a better experience or suffers less. But it truly is a door worth opening. And if nothing else, it can improve sleep and these sorts of things that can also have a dramatic effect on outcomes. So these are my reflections. I hope that this video may inspire at least some of you to be more courageous and to attempt to do this type of work, attempt to help someone create a radical remission of something like cancer. For me, that's always been like the gold standard of psychology. Can you help someone achieve something like that? And I think there's this guy called Howard Gardner who has this theory about multiple intelligences. And I've often thought about people like this particular client. You could call it like psychosomatic or psychoplastic intelligence. This wild capacity that some people have where they can be that tuned in with their experience and where they can embody a new identity or a new way of thinking that results in the remission of serious disease. Some people, in some contexts at least, have that capacity. And if you have the skills to guide them, then sometimes miracles can happen. When I was a kid, a family member of mine had a radical remission of cancer. Distant family member, very religious person who was prayed for and had a radical remission, which baffled the doctors. And not being a religious person, I never believed it to be a divine intervention. And of course, a lot of people get prayed for and they still have just as much cancer. So I've known from an early age that these things are possible, at least for some people, some of the time. And so I have a passion for this sort of stuff. Anyways, I hope this video was useful and interesting to you. If you have any questions or comments, please do post them. If you have some sort of issue in your life and you'd like to explore and see if you and I could be a good fit as a team for working together, I invite you to email me at provocativehypnosis.com. Thanks for listening.